Welcome, everyone. We will get started in about 5 minutes. So get your drink, get settled, and Lee and I will be with you here shortly. All right, we'll give everybody a couple more minutes to get on and join us. Looks like we've got quite a few people headed our way, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. By the way, while we're waiting for everyone to get on, if you guys like the picture I have behind me, you can go to aths.org/convention, find your own virtual background. Got a little how-to, so you can kind of feel like you're out in the truck parking lot. Or you can be like Lee and have all his models behind him. Well, welcome everyone. We will have a few more people, it looks like, coming on here at the last minute. But we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us for the first ever HHS virtual convention. Sad we had to move it, but glad we could still bring you the presentations and trucks. Hopefully you've had a chance to at least preview some of the trucks in the truck show. Lee is our first webinar presentation this week, and very grateful to have him with us. So today, just a little housekeeping. Most of you have probably been on Zoom. For those who haven't, welcome. It seems to be the new normal these days. Just so you know, all of the participants are muted, so we can't hear you or see you. You can see us. If you would like to ask a question, please do. Lee is very happy to take questions as we go through the presentation. Just either click the Q&A button that's down at the bottom of your screen for if you're on a laptop. Sometimes if you're on a tablet or a phone, it's at the top. You can click on the Q&A button and type in a question. You could click on the chat as well and type in a question, or you can raise your hand if you don't feel comfortable typing, and we can call on you, unmute you, and you can ask it live. So without further ado, Lee, it is all about you now.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello. This is my first presentation I've ever done, so bear with me. I'm going to tell you about building scale models of classic trucks. I've been building models for somewhere around 60 years. And since I retired from driving and wrenching on trucks in 2013, I've really concentrated on the trucks. And I'll just give you a little run through on how I do some of this stuff. I don't build a lot of stuff right out of the boxes because I like the trucks from the 40s and 50s, and that requires chasing after a lot of aftermarket things and such. What I've got here is, this is a Mack that I did. The cab and all this paraphernalia in the picture came from Dave Natal at American Industrial Truck Models. It's about a 1951 Mack Model A with the sleeper built into the cab. And this is what comes in the kit. There's no frame. I use a frame from a kit. Dave does have frames available if you don't want to tear into another kit. What I used was the Peterbilt snap kit from Revell, and all I used from it was the front half, and I just cut it off right behind the fuel tank mounts. And then I scratch built the rest of the frame from plastic stock and made cross members and found some springs in the parts box. These nice Mack 6-spoke wheels and tires also came from Dave Natal. And I don't remember if the tanks came from him or not, but my method of building is to actually almost completely build the model without doing any painting or anything, so I can make sure that everything fits and everything lines up, and I don't permanently glue anything together unless it's all going to be the same color. And then in this picture, the frame is all finished and painted. Did a little weathering on the tanks, added sanders from Dave Natal, and you can see where I'm cleaning up the door lines and everything before I do the final painting. This is the finished truck here. Little details really help when you're building something like this. The decals came from Jerry Reeder at Model Truck and Decals. And I think that all these ICC decals just came from a random kit. I have a big box of decals that I save for different things. I built a rack on the roof because this is refrigerated transport, and it needed a little walkway on the roof so that you could work on the reefer. So I just scratch built that out of random parts in the junk box. And when I put the glass in, I cut it across the passenger or the driver window so that it looks like it's open. It just adds a little extra detail. Went around the window openings with a black Sharpie pen, and that makes it look like there's a weather strip in there. And this is another picture of the truck. It's actually painted, the cab itself is painted with acrylic craft paint, real cheap, and it's brush painted. And then I rubbed it with my hands after it dried, and that gives it a semi-dull weathered look when it's all finished. And the craft paint is a satin finish, so it doesn't leave any brush strokes. So it comes out real well that way. Now the next project, the one I'm working on right now, is another resin cab, and that's a white 3000. It's an old Ron Cash cab from years and years ago. Turns out it wasn't very accurate, as I found out later on. And the tank trailer for this one is a 3D printed tank from Keystone Miniature Models, or Model Miniatures, and it comes in two pieces, so there's a seam right down the middle, and you glue that together with super glue. And then 3D printed products have a lot of lines on them, and I found that taking those 3D printed, like this tank, you can just take a rag that's dripping wet with lacquer thinner and rub it down real good, and it'll take a lot of those lines out of it, and then you can go ahead and prime it. Now this one, the white, I wanted the gas 6-cylinder engine, so I actually scratch built it out of sheet plastic. The nuts or bolts that hold the head on are made from styrene rod that has a hex shape, and I just drilled holes and pushed it down in there and then snipped it off and then sanded it smooth, and then drilled holes for the intake and exhaust manifolds. The actual block is just a resin cast bottom half of an engine that I use for when I'm building something you won't see the engine. And the transmission is a Spicer 5-speed that is cast from resin that I made. The frame on this truck came from the Ford 9000 cab over. And there's the frame is put together and primed, and the tank is primed, and the black spray on there is a guide coat, so that when I sand it, I know if there's any high and low spots, because when you sand it, the black specks will stay in the low spots, and you'll know that it needs a little more primer or maybe even a little more putty. I opened the doors on that old cab and built an interior so it'd have a little more detail. And I corrected the openings for the windows and so on, and sanded off the molded in headlights, and made new doors from sheet styrene. I just use 60 thousandths for the main door shape, and then put another 20 thousandths sheets on top of that to create this shape on the door. And there it is with the white paint is on the tank. It'll be a Standard Oil Products tanker. And the door, I've got a couple low spots in there I've got to take out, but the frame is painted and the cab is getting ready. Now this slide, I'm still working on the interior of the truck and the cab, and that's about as far as I've got on it right now. The tank is painted the Standard Oil colors, and the decals I made myself by finding images on the internet and transferring them into, you can use Microsoft Word or Microsoft Publisher, either one. And then you size them and print it out on regular paper, make sure everything's the right size. And then you can print it out on decal paper and put them on just like regular model car decals. And that's as far as I got on the white tanker. There'll be when I finish it, I'll do an article for Wheels of Time and display the finished truck. And that's where I am right now. I've got plenty of kits to work with, and that's my Snap-on service station that I use for a photo backdrop on a lot of my pictures. That's where you see that shop. And at this point, I take any questions or anything that you guys have.
Lee, somebody did ask if you could suggest a couple of good models to get started with.
For starting out, the best thing that you can get is the Revell or Peterbilt, the Peterbilt 359 or the Revell Kenworth W900A. You can find them at Hobby Lobby, and if you use a 40% coupon, you can get them for a little over $20. And they're a really nice kit for a starting kit. They're well detailed. They got the Caterpillar 3406 engine. They were originally supposed to be a snap kit, so they're pretty simple, but I've seen guys really make some fantastic models out of them. It's just a good place to start out. It's one of my favorite kits. I use them a lot for donors.
Awesome. Any basic tools that a beginner might need?
An X-Acto knife and a sprue cutter. A sprue cutter looks like diagonal pliers, except they have a flat edge, so they cut the part off the tree without leaving any big chunks of plastic that you got to work with. And those are two of the ones I use the most. Sanding sticks, you don't have to buy them from the hobby shop. You can get them at Walmart or the beauty shops. Women use them for sanding fingernails, but they're great for sanding small parts and working into tight places.
Awesome. Do you know what's available for fire truck models?
AMT had a pumper truck and a ladder truck, and they're still pretty easy to find. And Trumpeter had a modern fire truck. They're a little harder to find right now, but you can find them on places like eBay and Amazon.
Okay.
There's
go ahead.
also on the fire trucks, I did one with a 1950 Ford cab over cab, and I used the Monogram 1/32 scale fire truck. And there's a lot of things you can do with that one too.
All right. And Clayton wants to know approximately how many hours do you put in the average project?
Wow. Most of them take me 2 to 3 months to finish, and I'm working on them at least an hour or two a day. And some of them have taken literally years to work on.
Wow. All right. John Dahl would like to ask a question. John, if you, yep. John,
Okay.
go ahead and.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Okay. I see you have a lot of AMT kits there, and I've put a lot of model trucks together, and most of mine were AMT. Are they still as good a kit as they used to be, or do you recommend the Revell now?
The AMT kits are good kits, but you just about have to have some skills to really bring out the best in them. The tooling is old, and over the years, the part numbers don't match the instructions anymore. So if you don't know a little bit about trucks, you can get yourself into a pickle. And the best truck kits are the old Ertl truck kits. But
Well,
Revell isn't that great either.
I always found that my problem was I got in too big a hurry.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I wasn't patient enough to let things dry enough as they should, and then I ended up having to, sand something off or take something apart and do it again. But usually they turned out pretty good, and I was very pleased. Like I said, I have quite a large number of them, but I've never had too much experience with the Revell kit.
Yeah, the Revell kits are more detailed, and they take a little more patience, but they are good. And there's things that I don't like about them that we figured out ways around, like the tires going flat. I'll put a tip in one of my columns on how to fix that problem. And yeah,
All right,
the
thank you.
super
I
glue
really enjoyed
makes a
this.
big difference.
All right. Thanks, John. Bill wants to know what you use for filler when you're smoothing out imperfections.
If it's just a small imperfection, I use Squadron green putty. It's available from, I think, Hobby Lobby even sells it, or you can get it from Squadron online. For more ambitious filling, I use regular auto body Bondo filler, and seems to work just fine.
Okay. How do you hold the models together during assembly before paint?
You can use just a little dab of super glue if you want. What I try and do is assemble anything that's going to be the same color. Like truck frames are generally all the same color, the suspensions and everything. So I go ahead and glue it all together good and then paint it all at once. And sometimes I just don't glue it at all. When I go to put the cab on the frame, I might put the parts together and just kind of hold them together. Sometimes I use masking tape if I have to, or block it up with old tires or whatever I can find to make it where I can get it where I want it.
All right. What is your favorite finished project to date?
I would say that Mac that I had in the slideshow, it actually took the best in show at one of the IPMS shows locally, and it turned out there was a couple of happy accidents, mistakes that I made that turned out making it better. So that's the kind of thing I like.
That's great. Anybody else have any other questions? We still have quite a bit of time if anybody does. Raise your hand, type away. Lee, thank you. You have patience I never would can imagine to do these things. Seems like it takes almost as much time to put together a model as it does to do a whole truck, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I spend probably almost as much time doing research as I do building the model, because I get online and I find out everything I can about the truck, and I look at lots of pictures of the trucks back when they were new and try to bring that out in the model.
Okay. Do you put tires on after the cab?
Not necessarily. It helps to kind of leave things loose as far as the tires go, especially on the AMT kits, because you find out when you get it together that the axle is too far forward or too far back or something like that. So that's why you just continue to test fit over and over before you glue anything solid.
Okay, speaking of glue, we've got a couple of questions about glue. Bill says he may have missed it, but what glue is the best to use? Roy also wanted to know what the best type of glue.
I use a bunch of different kinds of glues. For the kit parts, unpainted kit parts, I use the Red Testers tube glue, the same stuff we used for years back in the 70s and 60s. And then for resin parts, you have to use a 5-minute epoxy or a super glue, and I use the gap filling super glue mostly for that. And I also use super glue for painted parts or chromed parts. So the only time I use the red glue is on plastic sub-assemblies. And then after that, it's super glue from then on. And then on the windshields and side windows, to keep them from getting messed up, I use Testors window cement, but you can also use Elmer's glue, and it tends not to fog the glass, and you can, if you get a little on the glass, you can wipe it off with a wet washcloth.
All right. Looks like John's got another question. John, go unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, a number of years ago, there was a gentleman at Walcott, Iowa, at the Jamboree, and he had a small trailer, and he had made a very high number of very detailed models, even some of the older trucks. I wonder if you happen to know the gentleman. I haven't seen him in the last couple of years, but he had hand built most of those models from scratch, and they were extremely detailed. I didn't know whether you happen to know the guy or not.
I don't think I know him. I've heard of I've never made it to the Jamboree, but I've heard a lot of guys talking about that display.
Yeah, he was there for about 2 or 3 years in a row, but the last 2 or 3 years he hasn't been there. Maybe he's become old enough that he doesn't get around so much anymore, but they were extremely detailed and very well built. And he had some plastic pieces laying there, hanging, that he showed that he what he uses to make the models. But they were, I just didn't know whether you ever run into him anywhere at any of your shows.
No.
All right, thanks, John. Barry, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Okay, thanks. I had to step away from the computer for a little bit. Did I miss anything on painting? Have you touched anything on what types of paint, spray or brush, that you use in different applications?
Well, I do a lot of painting with spray cans, and I'm just getting into the airbrush more and more. For the airbrush, I use the paint from Scale Finishes. It's an acrylic enamel, and it comes in the bottle where you can, it's all ready to spray. You just pour it in the airbrush and spray it on. And it seems to work pretty well. But like on the Mac that I featured in the slideshow, I actually painted it with a brush using craft paint, and I use a ton of that craft paint. You can get that at Walmart or Hobby Lobby, and it's only like 50 cents a bottle, and they have 1,000 colors. And most of it, if you get the satin finish, it doesn't show any brush strokes or anything, but it comes up kind of a dull finish. And you can actually make it shinier by brushing the Future floor finish. It's called Pledge now. The Pledge floor finish, it's a clear acrylic, and you can brush that over the other acrylic paint, and it'll give it a bit of a shine. So you don't even have to use any kind of spray if you don't want to, or if the fumes bother you.
Okay, what was that again to make the dull finish shine? What was that product?
It's a Pledge floor finish. You can get it at the store. It's a clear acrylic. It's not really a floor wax. It's an acrylic coating. And you just take a big old thick brush and brush it on, and it's self-leveling and doesn't leave any brush strokes, and it'll give it a bit of a shine.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Barry. All right. Bob wants to know, when you print your own decals, is that something anyone can do with any printer, or is there a special printer?
I use an inkjet printer, which is the cheapest thing you can buy. And you make up the decals in Microsoft Word, or just about everybody has Word. Or you can even use the Word pad that comes with your computer and import the pictures over to your document, and then always print it out on regular paper because decal paper is expensive. And then when you get everything the way you want it, you just put the decal paper in your inkjet printer and print it out. And there's two colors of decal paper. There's clear and there's white, because inkjet printers can't print white. Sometimes you have to print the decals on a white background and then just cut it square to put them on. It takes a little work, but it's a fast learning curve, and it's really simple.
Okay. Jerry wants to know, are there kits that were made that have a significant value today?
There's some that, like the Revell Can-Do Wrecker, those things bring, sometimes I've seen them go up to $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one kit I have in my collection that it's the first model truck kit that was made in styrene plastic in 1948. And it's worth somewhere around $1,000. I've only seen the one, and I bought it from a museum in Illinois. There's a lot of truck kits that run up $300 or $400, but you have to be careful if you're just buying it to build, because these molds and stuff, just about the time you pay a high dollar for a kit, then the company will reissue it and the value will drop to almost nothing because it's been reissued. A lot of the original issues the collectors keep just to collect, and they kind of hold their value. But if you're just building, sometimes you just have to wait a little while.
All right. And Tony wants to know, what do you use to make windshields and windows, and how do you attach them?
On flat windows, it's real easy. You can just use a clear sheet, like the windows or the windows in the boxes on die-cast vehicles and stuff like that, or any box that has a clear plastic window on it, you can cut it out. And for curved glass, a lot of times I use bubble packages. If anything looks like it could make a windshield, then I'll save that bubble and throw it in my glass box. And a lot of times, some people even use 2-liter bottles for a curved windshield and cut that curved portion out. And then when you go to put it in, I use that Tester's windshield glue or Elmer's glue, like I say, so that you can, if you make a mistake, you can take it off with a wet washcloth.
All right. And Tom LaPointe, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question. Let's see if Tom gets there. Go ahead, Tom.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm building the Watkins Kenworth, the new one, and I'm building it to match my own truck. But my problem is the wheels and tires don't fit together very good. The tires themselves, the inside diameter is too big for the wheel. Is there some sort of a spacer or something to kind of, some way to make the wheel itself bigger on the inside to fit the tire, or do I just super glue them together? And I don't really know what to do about them.
Yeah, sometimes you can wrap the wheel itself, put the wheel together and wrap it with tape or something like that until you can get the diameter big enough. And one of the best ways is to get aftermarket tires. Jamie at Moluminum sells aftermarket tires that are made of real rubber that slide on there, and you don't have to worry about them going flat on you sitting on the shelf or anything like that.
Yeah, because the way they're sitting now, I was thinking that they would just, as sitting on the shelf, they'd fall off the rims and all that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't look so good. So.
Yeah, super glue will work, but it's kind of a pain to get it where you want it.
Yeah, bigger in between the duals,
All right, Tom, thank you. All right, Bill wants to know, what brand is the fire truck in the photo on the screen? Second row on the left, 3 down, classic fire trucks. Looks like number 778.
Oh, that's Italieri. And that truck is an Opel Blitz from Germany. It's basically a late 30s Chevrolet built under license by Opel. So you can actually take the cab off if you don't want to make it an Opel, and you can use a cab from a 40s or 50s Chevrolet. And the wheels are European, but most people don't notice the difference. And if it bothers you, there's aftermarket Chevrolet wheels available.
Okay. All right, Kim wants to know, do you find after many years your models start to fall apart? And if so, if they are painted, is there a way to fix them easily? I have found this on my 30-year-old models done with Tester's red glue.
Yeah, you can use super glue to glue parts back on and so forth. I've had to do a few repairs, but most of mine stay together pretty well.
All right. And then Tom wants to know, he's looking for a Premier Max 7-ton dump truck. Can you help?
Good luck. I think I've talked to him about that. I think I'm even watching for it.
Guess some are harder to find than others.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Give them just a couple minutes here if they want to. Oh, how does one work with resin parts and kits?
Resin is another form of plastic, so as far as working with it, it's almost the same. The difference is the plastic glue doesn't work. You have to use super glue to hold things together, and you have to make sure it's clean because the molding process for resin leaves a mold residue that paint doesn't like to stick to. So you got to wash them in warm dishwater and give them a good scrubbing. And Wesley's bleach white for cleaning white wall tires also cleans the mold release residue off from them. And sometimes the resin parts are thick or maybe sometimes too thin. So you have to either grind out the places that are too thick or use some filler on the thin spots. But they're basically the same as plastic.
Okay. How do you take a model such as one that has doors on a truck to open? How do you make the doors open?
I use an X-Acto knife with a brand new blade and turn it backwards and just drag it down through the door opening lines, and don't use a lot of weight on it. You can hurt yourself actually. You just keep scraping down through the door lines and it'll cut. It doesn't take very long. It'll cut that door right open.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. All right. Well, Lee, I want to thank you. We'll see if we have any other questions that come up here, but I just want to thank you for doing this and being our first one of the weekend. So glad that you could actually still share this with us, even though we couldn't be in person, and people can still see your presentation. This presentation is being recorded, so if you know somebody who wanted to see it and was, it is Thursday, had to work,
Okay.
we will have them available on our website later, probably later this weekend. But we will get them up there, and so people can check them out. All right. Well, thank you, Lee. I appreciate your time and effort, and hopefully next year we'll see everyone in person.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.